Well, Larry, it's we're well into spring market. We've got April data now in front of us, and it's interesting times. I think we're seeing a lot of uncertainty. That's probably the theme right across the board, no matter whether you're in your local neighborhood, your city, your province, across the country. Canadians are a bit uncertain about the state of things right now, particularly, I think, mostly because of trade wars and tariffs. But I'm seeing a lot of effect on the real estate market. I think you probably are as well. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, economically, obviously, there's a lot of turmoil going on out there. The U.S. is certainly putting a lot of pressure on us right now with all the conversations going on there. Real estate has been taking a beating, and I mean that in the
Hmm.
sense that we have seen a lot more inventory come online. Sales have slowed down. Pricing has started to come down. But you got a lot of people that have been waiting, jumping on the market, and buyers are not pulling the trigger and buying the way people anticipated would happen this springtime. So definitely a lot of downward pressure there, and we're definitely feeling it across. When you got listings out there, those listings and those clients are certainly feeling it when they're not getting the showings they were expecting. And it's a sign of the times. It's what's going on. Even the ones that are getting the showings are not getting the offers. Buyers are not pulling the trigger. So there's a
Well, I
lot
think
happening out there, and I don't have an answer for it honestly in what's causing it.
other than the uncertainty, I think you're right. The answers in terms of what's causing it, when will it improve? We really don't have a crystal ball on that. I think uncertainty may be here to stay for a little while yet.
Yeah, I agree.
Good news today, apparently the U.S. in their talks with China have made some progress.
Yes.
How that relates to Canada remains to be seen. Hopefully, we get some reprieve on tariffs, particularly in the auto sector. But um, I think what we're seeing right now is a little bit of a reset. We're seeing inventory levels way up in some communities. Again, and there's always that caveat. What's happening in your neighborhood may not reflect what's happening elsewhere.
Absolutely. But
But
across the board, I
yeah,
mean, the sentiment out there is that there's a lot more houses available.
and there are.
And there are. I mean, inventory is up 60% plus, in some cases 100% in some towns, cities,
Yeah.
across the board year over year. And sales are down on an average about 20%. So
Yep.
that's going to have more inventory, more selection for buyers to choose from. And
And
we
as
got
those two stats diverge, what you're left with is rising months of inventory, and that's a stat that many consumers don't pay a lot of attention to. We do in the industry, of course,
yeah,
but it's a telling number. If you went from say 2.5 months of inventory last month to 4.5 months of inventory this month, that's a big shift. And
absolutely.
and what that says is that we're probably square. Well, I shouldn't say probably. We're squarely in a buyer's market, and that means buyers have leverage. And for a seller, you got to stand out.
Absolutely. I mean, when to give you an example, I had a showing on Friday, and the agent I spoke to after the showing told me he had 13 homes he looked at in this neighborhood. I
Wow.
mean, and that's not even all the homes that are available in the neighborhood. He looked
They're
at 13,
13 reasonably comparable homes.
all within about 10% of the price of what ours is, up or down. And now it comes down to features and benefits. What street is it on? How close is it to the school for walking distance, things like that. And what features and benefits did the house have, one over the other?
Yeah.
And it's going to make all the difference. I mean, these buyers have a lot of choice to pick from, and they can afford to take their time and decide which one is which. And the most common message I'm getting from agents when they're calling me now on my listings after showings or when I'm following up with them is, how motivated is your seller? That's the
Yeah.
question. And I mean, if they're having that conversation with three, four, five agents, you're sure one of them's going to say, "My seller's motivated. He's very motivated."
Well,
So
there's a few fortunate sellers I think out there who maybe find themselves in a neighborhood where there isn't an overabundance of inventory, and if that's the case, then they'll probably do okay. But Glen Abbey, for example, we talked about that not so long ago. 94 listings.
yeah,
Um, the Orchard in Burlington has over 40 listings, most of them detached. But using that as an example, if most of them are detached, and you've got a townhome to sell, like, maybe you'll be all right. But
and I mean, price point is also something that's really, we're seeing a shift in what's buying and selling. I mean, the lower price stuff has always had an attractive audience buying those homes under $1 million, in some cases under 700, depending on the market. But we've even seen a bit of a slowdown there. But the homes, once you get over that 1.5 number, and I guess I'm talking more of Oakville, 1.5, 2 million, up in that range, we've really seen a slowdown there in the amount of activity. But we've seen a
mm,
boom in the amount of homes. And if I look back even at my own client database and I look at who's hitting the market, I got a lot of clients out there that have been waiting. They've been waiting since 2022. When prices started to go back down, they're going to wait for prices to come back up. And what they're seeing is that they're not going back up. They've kind of flatlined. And
yeah.
those sellers now are saying, you know what, maybe we should just make the move. And I'm having more and more of those conversations about, listen, buy and sell in the same market.
Hmm.
You're not going to feel it as much. And depending on the neighborhood you're looking into, they could be suffering the same situation that you're dealing with, you're tasked with, challenged with. So, I mean, all those things are considerations to think about. Well, what it means though is you got a lot more people that have been holding off that are jumping into that market, and that's why we're seeing a boom in inventory right now.
Yeah. And it's natural for a buyer to be concerned and cautious. Frankly, anybody in a market like this is probably going to do their best to do all their homework and due diligence and be as careful as they can. That being said, there's I think a huge opportunity for buyers right now. We've got rates that have come down a bit. There's a possibility in June we'll see another rate cut, and with choice and leverage and prices down a little bit, that could spell pretty good opportunity for a buyer. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we had to look. You look back and buyers were struggling to find a house, never mind the one they wanted.
Yeah.
So now you can kind of pick and choose, and you've got your list of all the things you're hoping to find in a house. You can check off as many boxes as you like without the same fear of competition.
Absolutely. And we even have a lot of those buyers that were competing to get homes a few years ago that are in the market now trying to sell because of whatever number of reasons.
Right.
And I mean, one of the articles that I read on the weekend was about the switch of market that we're in. We're actually in a market now where they're saying selling at a loss is not unheard of in this market. It's become a little more commonplace because of these people that bought at these overinflated prices, ultra low interest rates. They're now dealing with the challenges of what that represents in this type of market. So
I think I saw the same article.
yeah, so I mean, it's a buyer's market out there. I don't think anybody's going to deny that. To my point earlier, the question is how motivated is your seller? What I find is a lot of the buyers that are willing to pull the trigger today are buyers that are looking for the right deal. So,
Well, just over the weekend, I got an email through our MLS alert system of a house that had just new listing over the weekend. Um, the exact price, don't quote me, roughly 125. And I'm looking at the pictures going, geez, this looks really familiar. And so I looked it up in our system. Sure enough, it had sold 2 years ago, 3 years ago
yeah,
for 145.
yeah,
Same house. I mean, the pictures looked identical. I don't think they did anything.
yeah,
And here they are, 2 years, 3 years later, looking at potentially a six-figure price differential in the seller's view, wrong direction.
yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So you got to think, I mean, what economic pressures are out there on homeowners today that are creating somebody that even lists at 200,000 less than what they bought it for?
yeah,
Right? I mean, that's substantial. So if you're a buyer, um, it's the market to be active in. I mean, and we're seeing that. We're seeing the buyers that are shopping are looking for the right deals. I mean, I'm hearing things like, well, I'm a cash buyer, flexible closing, willing to work with a motivated seller. Like you're hearing all these catchphrases out there that active,
yeah. Put it on paper.
well, that's my response to all of them is we don't negotiate verbally, put it on paper, and let's see if we can't get something done. But it's definitely a buyer's market. And if you're not in the market where you got to sell to buy, man, it's an opportunity to capitalize. But if you
Yeah,
are, a buyer who needs to sell, I'll go back to what I've told people for a long time. You're better off hitting the market as a seller first than buying, especially in this type
yes.
of market. So you know what you have to work with, and you're not under the gun because I mean that creates a whole new other set of problems. But
Big, big
if you
problems.
can do the buy and sell in the same market, I'm not going to say you're going to come out better, but you should come out in at least in a neutral position.
Well, and that neutral position is ideal because while maybe it takes away the opportunity for something excessively positive, it takes away the risk of a much worse situation.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there's some houses out there that are selling quickly.
Well, there
Price is
is.
definitely part of it, and the product you have to sell. I mean, if your house is really well done and a buyer can buy it and move in and not have to do anything, there's a value to that. The buyer still today.
Oh yeah, I can think of two examples just near me. One of them just about 2, 3 weeks ago, beautifully presented. I shared it with a client. I said, if you're interested, we got to go see it now because it's going to sell in about 10 minutes. Well, sure enough, it did.
Yeah,
Full ask day one.
yeah,
And the other example, it beautifully presented as well, fairly unique. They sold it 100,000 over asking just a couple days ago.
yeah.
So those examples are out there, but you got to be
Yeah.
priced right, and you got to look good. You
But
got
then to the flip
to
side of that, I took clients to see a house back in February that should have sold overnight. Absolutely should have sold overnight. Now, it wasn't a house that was move-in ready. It was, you can live in it, but it wasn't a finished, updated home. But it was in a highly desirable neighborhood where either you could renovate this house and it was good for another 15 or 20 years, or you could knock it down and build a beautiful house amongst all these other big, beautiful homes in the area.
yeah,
And here we are going into the middle of May, and the house is still on the market, hasn't sold. And that's because the people looking to buy it have to do work, and that
yeah.
becomes a constraint for a lot of people.
Well, the more turnkey, the better. There's always somebody that wants to do work or is interested in doing it. But they want a huge discount too, right? And I
Absolutely.
think the buyers who want non-turnkey are far outnumbered by the buyers who do want turnkey.
Oh, for sure. For
So,
sure.
like I said, you gotta, it's gotta be presented well and put your best foot forward, do all the preparation to get the house ready. And hopefully, that combined
Well,
with a sharp price, you'll get it done.
I find that buyers are still shopping at the high end of their budget. So
Oh
if
yeah.
someone's got, let's just say someone's got a $1.5 million budget to buy a new home, they're not looking at a home for $1.5 million that they got to sink $300,000 into.
Yeah.
They're looking for a home they can buy for 1.5 and move in and live in.
Right.
And at the same time, they're not looking at the $1.2 million homes thinking they can, renovate the one they're buying.
No, doing the work's not for everybody, that's for sure.
Well, it's also a financing challenge because you can't typically go to the bank, get approval for 1.5, spend 1.2, and then get I mean, you could do it on your line of credit, but you have a separate payment then.
Yeah,
So
I mean there are cost plus improvements, mortgages out there and financing options, but generally speaking, every time I've explored that option or scenarios like that, the rates aren't great and the
exactly,
terms are more onerous. So you're right. I mean, if you don't have a big rental budget just sitting there in a piggy bank, so to
yeah.
speak, it's probably not the direction you want to go.
The other thing that I find right now is people's understanding of what updated is. When we talk about a home that's updated, it's updated in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
It's current style within the last, I think even 5 years is getting long in the tooth to call it an updated home. I think you're
depending on the
probably
finishes. Yeah,
absolutely like you can get away with saying updated if it's 5 years old, but you got to identify it was done 5 years ago. When you've put in a kitchen 15 years ago, that's not an update today. That's a 15-year-old kitchen. So I understand that you've updated it since you bought your home, but when people think about updated, they think recently updated.
yeah,
So I'm finding that as well when I'm looking at homes. I'll see listings where it says, $200,000 in upgrades, and when you show up, there was back in 2005.
yeah. It's not a value to the buyer.
It's not. They're
Maybe they're
looking
happy that
for,
it's not the original kitchen from 1960, but
well, I think it's
one from
just what
2005 isn't impressing anybody either.
no, and I think it's just a matter of, what an expectation of a buyer is today versus what an expectation of a seller is. I understand you put a new kitchen in or you did the floors, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, but that doesn't represent an update that you can call a current update in a home. So when people are
Yeah.
coming in and looking at it, they're going to look at it for what it is. Because if you got another house right around the corner that's, within 10% of the price of your home and it was actually just updated, it's going to show significantly different.
Oh, absolutely. The older finishes that, are being described as an update because they're not original. Sure,
Yeah.
you could move in and probably be reasonably comfortable. But it's not adding value. You can't
No.
you can't charge a premium for something you did 20 years ago.
Exactly. So just things that I'm noticing out there right now. And I mean, when you're in a market like this, you got to talk about different things, right? I mean, you got to look at different things and understand it a little differently. And I think right now those are the realistic points that we're challenged with is what expectation is around what the product is you're selling and what that price should look like and what it's based
Yeah.
off.
So for the next well, fast forward a month, I'm hoping by the time we do our next video, we'll be talking about maybe another rate cut.
Yeah, that's coming
Um,
up on June 4th.
And I would like to see hopefully a bit of confidence restored, consumer confidence, on all fronts, whether you're buying a house, a car, or whatever you want to do. But right now, people seem to be a bit cautious. I'd like to see people feel a bit more optimistic about, future outlook. And, it's not going to happen overnight, but, you know, fast forward a month, I hope we have some good news.
Let's hope so because we're heading into the summer months. I mean, the spring market has been, I'll call it flat. We're down on average of 20% in sales, but a lot of different factors we're dealing with this year that we haven't dealt with in the last couple of years. So let's hope we get into the summer and all this pent up buyers out there that are holding off. Let's hope they're ready to pull the trigger and become
Yeah,
new
and
homeowners.
that's a good point. I always say, demand doesn't go away, it just parks,
Well,
pushes.
that's it.
So, spring market, which you just mentioned, we haven't really had. Maybe we'll have a delayed or late spring market. Who knows? Maybe it'll be in the summer, maybe it'll be in the fall. But at some point, buyers will come back to the market, and hopefully sooner than later.
We still hear about how we have a shortage of housing in this country and they got to build a million new homes in the next 5 to 10 years to keep up with demand. So the buyers are out there. I don't know where they're all living if they got to buy houses. So that's kind of the flip side to all of this. Where are they today?
Yeah,
Um,
good
but
question.
but even I mean, the other big thing we're hearing in the news is how the demand for rental properties has dropped off. Rental rates are starting to drop.
Hmm.
So it's all tied together. So they're out there. People are ready to become homeowners. I think we just need the conditions around that economically to come to play where people have a little more confidence, like you said. And let's hope that's around the corner.
Well, until we reach that corner, happy selling this month, and we'll talk soon.
All right. All the best. Talk soon.
All right, see ya.